Hello, everyone. This is the 60th episode of the Soccer Nostalgia Talk Podcast. As always, this is Sean from Los Angeles, and I'm joined by Paul from Shipley in England. For this episode, we welcome back Mr. Jan Roskott of DutchSoccerSite.org as we discuss the matches of the Holland national team for the 1985-86 season. Last time we left off in the spring of 1985 with Holland ending a season by defeating Hungary in a World Cup qualifier. Hungary had already qualified, and the win earned the Dutch a World Cup playoff spot. This season would be defined by these qualifier playoffs against their neighbors, Belgium. In some ways, it would be a defining season, as it would be a reference point from ending the 70s legacy and into the future. We start off the season with a friendly on September 4th at Heerenveen with the Dutch hosting Bulgaria. And as you remember from the previous season, Leo Benhacker was acting as an interim manager while Rinus Michels was recovering from surgery. So Benhacker would continue in this capacity for the entire season of 85-86. For this match against Bulgaria at Heerenveen, we have the following Dutch squad. Hans van Breukelen of PSV Eindhoven in goal. Captain of the side, Ben Wijnstekers of Feyenoord. Ernie Brands of PSV Eindhoven. He's replaced by Huub Stevens of PSV Eindhoven in the 46th minute. Adrie van Tichelen of Groningen. Willy van de Kerkhoff of PSV Eindhoven. Frank Rijkaard of Ajax. Michel Valk of PSV Eindhoven. Ruud Gullit, he had joined PSV Eindhoven that season, and he'd be replaced by Simon Tahamata of Feyenoord in the 46th minute. Wim Kieft of Pisa in Italy. Marco van Basten of Ajax. And Rob de Wit of Ajax. And quickly going to the Bulgaria side, managed by Ivan Vutsov, you have Ilya Valov of Botev Vratsa, Ilya Diakov of Dobruja Dobrich. He replaced by Atanas Pashev of Trakia Plovdiv in the 75th minute. Krasimir Koev of Vitosha Sofia. Captain of the side, Georgi Dimitrov of Sredets Sofia. Petar Petrov of Sredets Sofia. Radoslav Zdravkov of Sredets Sofia. Anios Satkov of Lokomotiv Plovdiv. Plamen Getov of Spartak Pleven. He'd replaced by Hristo Kolev of Lokomotiv Plovdiv in the 58th minute. Živko Gospodinov of Spartak Varna. Kostadin Kostadinov of Trakia Plovdiv. He'd replaced by Ruzi Gochev of Vitosha Sofia in the 46th minute. And Božidar Iskrenov of Vitosha Sofia. This match, the Dutch would win 1-0. Rob de Wit would score the winner in the 81st minute. This is one of those rare matches where I have not been able to find any footage anywhere for this match. I guess the significant point about this match is that this match was the last international appearances of Ernie Brands, who was earning his 28th cap. His first cap had been in 1977. He's mostly remembered for scoring that long-range goals in the 1978 World Cup, especially against Italy.
And scored his own goal in the same match. Do you remember that?
Yes. Yeah, and Huub Stevens as well. So both of them from PSV Eindhoven. This was Huub Stevens' 18th match. And last cap, his first cap had been in 1979. So you're already seeing that some of the 70s players are starting to slowly make way. This was a preparatory friendly ahead of their double matches against Belgium.
I think it was very clear that if you look at the team and you look at the number of caps and you look at the games that are still coming, that you could literally see the drifting out of the older generation and the new ones coming in, as you said. And there was an interesting collision, if you like, of styles there, because the youngsters were all under the spell of Johan Cruijff's coaching at Ajax. He was a player there before he became a coach, but as a player, he was also coaching the players, basically. And these guys were all used to working the Cruyff way, whereas the older generation, they had their own way, I guess. And I think Leo Beenhakker as a coach wasn't able back then to do what today coaches like Guardiola would do, or Ten Hag would do, or Conte, drill a system, have a philosophy, and let everybody play in that system. And you could tell with all these games, I mean, this game, I don't remember this game even, but there's a couple of games after this one in the run up to Belgium, and also after Belgium, a couple of friendlies, completely disjointed. Not because we didn't have the talent, but because there was no real coaching and tactical plan. It just went like, okay, you're a right winger, you play right wing, you're a left wing, see you later. And we weren't good enough to just do that. Whereas in the 70s with Cruyff and Van Hanegem, we had so much quality, they didn't need coaching. They would just sort it out themselves. And you could see that. I was watching these games and I'm thinking, how is this possible? We've got Van Basten, we've got Gullit, we've got Rijkaard, we've got Van Breukelen, we've got all these big names, and it doesn't work. Why? I think you have to look at the coach in all honesty.
We come to the important qualifier playoffs. The first one is on October 16th at Brussels against Belgium. For this match, we have the following lineup. Hans van Breukelen of PSV Eindhoven in goal. Captain of the side, Ben Wijnstekers of Feyenoord. Ronald Spelbos of Ajax. Michel van de Korput of Köln in West Germany. Adrie van Tigelen of Groningen. Ruud Gullit of PSV Eindhoven. He'd replaced by Edo Ophof of Ajax in the 85th minute. Willy van der Kerkhoff of PSV Eindhoven. Marco van Basten of Ajax. Wim Kieft of Pisa in Italy. Rob de Wit of Ajax, and he'd be replaced by Simon Tahamata of Feyenoord in the 88th minute. Now, quickly going to the Belgian side, you have Jean-Marie Pfaff of Bayern Munich in West Germany, Eric Gerrits of PSV Eindhoven, George Groen of Anderlecht. He'd be replaced by Alex Zhernatinski of Standard Liège in the 68th minute, Frankie van der Elst of Club Brugge, Michel Renkin of Standard Liège, Frank Verkouteren of Anderlecht, René van der Reyken of Anderlecht, Leo van der Elst of Club Brugge, Erwin Vandenberg of Anderlecht, Nico Claesen of Standard Liège, and captain of the side, Jan Sulemans of Club Brugge, side managed by Guy Thies. The background to this match also, just a week before this match, former Belgian international Ludo Queck was also killed in a car accident on October 9th, and he was only 30 years old. And yeah, we all remember from Anderlecht. He later joined Inter in Italy. For this match, this important qualifier, Dutch would start very badly as Wim Kieft would be sent off as early as the 4th minute for hitting Frankie Verkouteren in the throat. Already, they were a man down. In the 19th minute, Nico Claesen crossed from the left side to the other side to Jan Sulemans at the edge of the box, who headed across to Verkouteren, who took a beautiful shot from just outside of the box and scored Belgium's winner.
It was a good goal.
Yes, a key win for the Belgians. Other things to remember is that Van Basten was booked, and that suspended him from the return leg. So they were already going to be without Kieft and Van Basten as strikers for the return leg. And also, this was Edo Ophof's last cap for Holland. This was his 15th cap. His first cap had been 1981. And also another legend of the 70s, Willy van der Kerkhoff. This was his final cap, 63rd and final cap. His first cap had been in 1973.
Yeah. Terrible game. I remember it well. We have to be honest. The Belgian team was a strong team. They had really quality out there, and we always felt that we were better than Belgium. But I think in those days, we knew that they were very good as well. We had a couple of young players, of course, and Verkouter is a very smart, shrewd player. We always compared Verkouter with Lothar Matthäus from Germany, sort of similar type midfield, tough in the challenges and a little bit tricky. And I think Wim Kieft was a bit naive and he was tricked by Verkouter. Verkouter was provoking him a little bit. And I think Kieft just pushed him away with that move with your hand. You can't do that, of course. He didn't hit him in the face. And Verkouter made a meal of it, rolling around, hands on his face. And Wim Kieft was red carded. And I remember that everybody in the Netherlands they were fuming because of the Belgian Verkouter, but also Kieft, because you got to be smarter. You don't let yourself be provoked in a game like this. So it was 10 versus 11, I think, for 86 minutes or something, which we couldn't recover from. So the 1-0 was not even a bad result, looking back. But as you said, John, we had to play them, score 2 goals in the home game without Kieft and Van Basten. So that was a challenge. And I decided to see that match in Rotterdam. Well, I may have told you this before when we spoke about this era. I had tickets with my father-in-law and with my father. And I vividly remember, I'm not sure if you want to hear this, but apart from the game, I vividly remember that we parked the car really far away because it was busy, the Kuip was full, and we drove in and we couldn't find a car parking spot. So we had to walk probably 20 minutes to get to the stadium, and it was bitter cold. And we walked really, forcefully. And later on, it seemed that my dad hurt his knee during that walk and never recovered from that. He was always having serious issues and needed to be operated. And I never realized it until later when I asked him, well, how did it happen actually? And he said, do you remember the Belgium game? He said, you guys, you walked so fast and I didn't want to say anything. So I just kept on going, but he hurt his knee. Anyway, that's how I remember that night. I remember that it was shocking cold, and I remember the goal that Belgium made. But I'm talking about the match that is yet to come. So I'll talk about this later on. But this game, terrible red card. Wim Kieft was on telly the other day, and he's still one of the analysts on Dutch television. And I think a week ago he was in the show, and they talked about that particular situation. He still gets a lot of cynical jokes towards his head, about that red card. And he's like, yeah. And then he always defends himself as saying, yeah, but Verkouter is also a bit of and everybody's like, yeah, we know that. But still, if you know that, don't get red carded. It's an ongoing thing.
Were you confident ahead of the return game, Jan? How did you feel about it?
Absolutely. We were confident about this game as well. Because of who, that's Dutch thing. The Dutch are always a bit cocky, and Belgian people are always a little bit more humble. So we felt like, we'll take them. And we were really, really keen to get to that World Cup. And listen, if you have Gullit, Rijkaard, all these names out there, you would expect to go. Van der Korpet was a really good defender. Van Breukelen, a really good goalkeeper, of course. Spelbos in those days was a really strong defender as well. And we had all these attacking options with Rob de Wit and John van Schip and Taha Mata. So we felt like, we're going to get these guys. But Belgium has always been tough for us to play against. Yeah, so, and then the home game, we missed the strikers, but we were confident with the full De Kuip stadium behind the team that we would pull it through.
So let's talk about this game. On November 20th, the deciding qualifier at Rotterdam's De Kuip Stadion.
Yeah.
For this match, you have the following squad. Hans van Breukelen of PSV Eindhoven in goal. Captain of the side, Ben Wijnstekers. Michel van der Korput of Köln in West Germany. He replaced by international debutant John van Loon of Utrecht in the 46th minute. Ronald Spelbos of Ajax. Adrie van Tiegelen of Groningen. Ruud Gullit of PSV Eindhoven. Frank Rijkaard of Ajax. Michel Valk of PSV Eindhoven. Simon Taha Mata of Feyenoord. He'd be replaced by Sonny Siloy of Ajax in the 76th minute. Peter Houtman of Groningen. And Rob de Wit of Ajax. Going through the Belgian lineup, we have Jean-Marie Pfaff of Bayern Munich, Eric Gerrits of PSV Eindhoven, Hugo Broos of Club Brugge, Frankie van der Elst of Club Brugge. He replaced by international debutant Daniel Waite of Waregem in the 75th minute, Michel de Wolf of Ghent, Frank Verkouteren of Anderlecht, René van der Reyken of Anderlecht, Leo van der Elst of Club Brugge. He replaced by George Groen of Anderlecht in the 46th minute.
That's a name we don't speak in Holland.
Leo Kleisters of Waterschei. Another international debutant, Philippe Desmet of Waregem. And captain of the side, Jan Sulemans of Club Brugge. As you mentioned, it was a very cold day. If you've seen the highlights, just about all the players are wearing tights and spandex under their kit. We should mention that for the Belgians, Gerard Plessers was suspended, and Erwin van den Berg and Mark de Grijze were injured. And we already mentioned that Wim Kieft and Van Basten were suspended from the Dutch side. For this match, the Dutch took the lead in the 60th minute. De Wit crossed on the left side, and Houtman scored with a downward header.
The heading specialist, Peter Houtman.
And the Dutch seemingly were through when they scored their second goal in the 72nd minute. Hullet crossed from the right side. His cross was deflected by defender and then diverted by Pfaff in the path of De Wit, who volleyed the second goal.
And we were going to the World Cup then.
Ben Hacker took off Tahamata and put in Siloy, a defender, to, I guess, secure the lead. But in the 85th minute, George Groen scored with a header when he headed in Gerrits' cross from the right side. The Belgians were through with the away goal rule and qualified for the World Cup.
Which we don't have anymore, the away rule.
For the second consecutive time, the Dutch missed out on a World Cup.
Yeah, well, that was quite a hangover, if you like. And the game, as you said, the first half was tough, nerves, and a bit tense. You want that first goal, and with a guy like Peter Houtman, he wasn't a great player. He was slow. He was not the best technician. He was a tremendous header, probably one of the best headers we ever had. He was tall, obviously, and after Groningen, he still had a career at Feyenoord. I think he played in Portugal as well. Guess what his current job is?
I believe you may mention that he's a stadium announcer, right, at Feyenoord? Is that right?
Very good, very good, very good. Yeah, he is. And I don't know how he was 28 in 85. So, but if you see him now, he still looks like he's 50. Anyway, he scored that goal, and then the second goal, Rob de Wit. So we all felt like, yes, we're going to go to Mexico. I think I actually was making plans with my dad and my father-in-law to go to Mexico and watch a couple of games. And then Beenhakker, as some of the coaches usually do, when you're ahead and you got to defend the lead, you bring in a defender, but sometimes you invite the opponent in by doing that. And George Groen was on the pitch, and he's a good header of the ball as well. So they pushed him forward. So what Beenhakker did is he brought John van Loon, who was a striker. But we didn't need to score goals, of course. Well, when he came in, we did. But after we were 2-0 up, John van Loon was told to be a defender to stop Groen from heading the ball. And when that infamous cross came in from Eric Gerrits, John van Loon was ball watching. It was his debut, if I'm not mistaken, in the Dutch team. Yes. So, full card. It must have been impressive for him. He just lost his marker, and Groen scored, and it was horrible. Yep.
After the elimination, Willy van der Kerkhoff announced his retirement from the national team. Obviously, the previous match had been his last match. Others that no longer played for the national team after this match were Michel van de Corput. This was his 23rd and final cap. His first cap had been 1978. Also, the captain, Ben Weinsteckers. This was his 36th and final cap. His first cap was in 1979. And also Peter Houtman. But he had like I said, he had a short career with the national team. His first cap had been in 1983. So he had 8 caps and 7 goals. Despite that seemingly impressive stat, he never really seemed to be the first choice for Holland as far as a striker.
We had better strikers usually, yeah. And I think particularly when Kieften, Van Basten and Bosman and those guys came through, they were all way better. And I remember that there was a training session where I think someone needed to mark Houtman during the practice. And I think Van Basten said something like, who's going to mark this lamppost or something like that about Houtman. And I think that didn't end well. It was a bit of a thing that a young player would say something like that about Peter Houtman. But obviously those Amsterdam-based Ajax talents, they didn't care. They didn't have respect or reverence for all the players. They were the new kids on the block. Yeah, Peter Houtman, he was a footnote, I suppose. But we did have a tremendous list of names, if I look at it. But we weren't able to get to that tournament. So that was 82, 84, 86. Something needed to happen. But I read an interview with Ben Weinsteckers. As you said, he was the captain. And he can still look back at that and mourn, because he was part of the group from 74. He used to play with Willem van Hanegem and Johan Cruijff when he was younger at Feyenoord. And then obviously he played with Gullit and Van Basten and Rijkaard when they were coming in. But he just missed out being in the middle. He made it to the 1980 Euros, but that was a terrible tournament for us. But I guess for everyone, it was a short Euros. It wasn't what we are used to today. Yeah, so he's still pondering what life could have been like if he would have been able to join either the new talents or was born maybe a couple of years earlier.
In a way, though, this loss kind of was the reference point of the end of that era and the beginning of the new era.
Yes.
As from the year 1986, it looks like the young Ajax contingent, and also we saw the appointment of Ruud Gullit as the new captain of Holland from this point onwards. And we have to remember, Gullit was a young man. I think he must have been like 23, 24 at this point.
23, yeah.
And he was captain of Holland.
So, he had that natural charisma.
Yes.
And I think that all the players listened to him. Even René van der Gijp, who was older and who was known to be a rebel and didn't listen to coaches and whatnot. René van der Gijp also listened to what Gullit had to say. And that had to do with his physique. He was just one of the strongest players. You know, in duels, you couldn't get him off the ball. He was the guy who could run not the fastest, but the longest as well. But he was also the ladies' man. So he always had, girls and different girls coming to the players. He just made an impression like that, like a playboy on the other players. And he was the alpha male. So that was him. And Rijkaard, I think, was a better player than Gullit in terms of skills, but way more relaxed and laid back and didn't want to be a leader. And as you will know, he coached Barcelona to the Champions League victory. And since then, he never really did anything in football anymore. Whereas Ruud Gullit is always going to be somewhere involved in whatever capacity. I think Ruud Gullit has had every job in football except for ball boy and except for physio, I suppose. Yeah.
Now the next objective was to be the 1988 Euros. And until then, the year 1986, they would have to play a number of friendlies before the qualifiers in the fall. The elimination allowed for the introduction of the new younger players and a new system, perhaps. We still have Leo Ben Hacker as the interim manager for the first friendly of 1986. On March 12th, the Dutch traveled to East Germany at Leipzig. For this match, we have the following lineup. Joop Hille of Feyenoord in goal. Sonny Siloy of Ajax, Ronald Koeman of Ajax, Adrie van Tichelen of Groningen, Peter Boev of Ajax, Gerald Vandenberg of Ajax, Jan Wouters of Utrecht. This was his second cap. If you remember,
Yeah, can you imagine?
Yeah, his first cap had been in 1982 in a friendly against France. In our first podcast, we discussed it, I believe.
That's correct. Kees Rijvers was the coach who gave him his debut. Yeah.
And this would be the point where Jan Wouters would be a fixture in the Dutch side for almost the next decade from this point on. And this would be his last season at Utrecht as well. He would join Ajax for the following season.
Marco van Basten was not happy with that. You may remember me telling you about that.
Yes. This is a story I've read. When they signed Wouters, apparently Marco van Basten said, with all due respect to the player, I don't think he's going to bring us any European titles, basically.
Exactly.
And of course, a year later, Ajax had won the Winners' Cup with Wouters in the side. So, anyway. So then we have Michel Valk of PSV Eindhoven, Rob de Witt of Ajax, Marco van Basten of Ajax, and the new captain of Holland, Ruud Gullit of PSV Eindhoven. And going through the East German lineup, you have captain of the side and goalkeeper René Müller of Lokomotiv Leipzig, Frank Rocht of Dynamo Berlin, Ronald Krier of Lokomotiv Leipzig, Karsten Sanger of Rot-Weiß Erfurt, Uwe Zoce of Lokomotiv Leipzig, Hans-Uwe Pils of Dynamo Dresden, Matthias Liebers of Lokomotiv Leipzig, Rainer Ernst of Dynamo Berlin, and he replaced by Henry Lesser of Carl Zeiss Jena in the 61st minute, Jörg Stubner of Dynamo Dresden, Ulf Kirsten of Dynamo Dresden, and Andreas Tam of Dynamo Berlin, side managed by Bernd Stang. So for this match that was played in a very muddy pitch, the Dutch were winners with a goal by Van Basten in the 13th minute. So Sonny Siloy crossed from the right side and Van Basten headed in the winner.
I just wanted to quickly say that the goal is actually almost a copy of the 87 goal that they scored in the finals.
Right. For the Winners' Cup against Lokomotiv Leipzig. That's right. Oh, yeah. Many of the same players on the opposing side that day as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. They would have thought, wow, deja vu.
We're noticing that it's a much younger side now. We see Koeman is back in the side, Vandenberg, Wouters, Siloy, and a young captain in Gullit. The emphasis is on youth now. The old guard is more or less gone.
Oldest player, I think, was Adrie van Tichelen, 28 years old, and he was a late bloomer, as they say. So I think he was still playing for Groningen in those days, and he would, of course, go to PSV and play at Anderlecht later, become a big name player.
Well, we should mention that one veteran would make his way back, but that's for the following season when Arnold Muren would be back on and be part of the 1988 Euro winners. But regardless of that, the squad was much younger. They were building for the future, clearly, at this point.
Well, there was an excitement around this team because obviously Ajax was also impressing with those youngsters, and we all thought that these guys were going to make a difference for us. But I do remember that in the aftermath of not going to Mexico, the friendly games, we were the friendly opponent for teams that would go to Mexico. And it was just terrible. It was just really frustrating to play those friendly games as a sparring partner while you were not going to the World Cup. So I remember they were terrible. Yeah, no one cared. I don't think there were any good results even, Sean, in those friendlies, were they?
No. Only the win against East Germany.
This one. Yeah, exactly.
We come to one of those test matches against the World Cup qualifiers. On April 29th, Holland hosted Scotland at Eindhoven.
That was with Michels, eh?
That was still with Ben Hacker.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Michels would come in the fall.
Okay.
Yeah. For this match, we have a number of debutants. We have the following lineup for this match. Hans van Breukelen of PSV Eindhoven. Making his international debut, Danny Blind of Sparta Rotterdam.
Oh, wow.
Sonny Siloy of Ajax. Ronald Koeman of Ajax. Adrie van Tichelen of Groningen. Jan Wouters of Utrecht. Gerald Vandenburg of Ajax. Michel Valk of PSV Eindhoven. He'll be replaced by international debutant Wilbert Souvrin of Fortuna Sittard in the 72nd minute. Another international debutant, John van Schip of Ajax. Another debutant, Johnny Bosman of Ajax. And Rob DeWitt of Ajax. Quickly going through the Scotland lineup managed by Sir Alex Ferguson.
I didn't know that Alex Ferguson was the coach.
Well, if you remember in the previous fall, Scotland manager Jock Stein passed away after a heart attack in a World Cup qualifier against Wales. Sir Alex Ferguson, well, he wasn't Sir at the time, knighted at the time, but Alex Ferguson, then Aberdeen manager, served on a caretaker basis, concurrently as Aberdeen manager and national team manager up until the 1986 World Cup.
Right.
Yeah. We have Andy Gorham of Oldham Athletic in goal, Maurice Malpas of Dundee United, Arthur Albiston of Manchester United, David Nary of Dundee United, Alex McLeish of Aberdeen, captain of the side Willie Miller of Aberdeen, Paul Sturrock of Dundee United, James Bett of Aberdeen, Ollie McCoist of Rangers Glasgow, Robert Connor of Dundee, and Davy Cooper of Rangers Glasgow.
No Celtic players.
No Celtic players. No, yeah, that's strange. Yeah. So, well, in any case, it was a very experimental Scotland side as well. I think Robert Connor was making his debut among others.
Yeah, there were a lot of debuts.
Yeah. This match would end as a scoreless tie. Apart from the debutants, four of them, Blind, Souvrin, Van Schip, and Bosman. Souvrin, Van Schip, and Bosman would be part of the 1988 Euro side.
Yeah.
Also, Michel Valk of PSV Eindhoven played his last cap for Holland. This was his 16th cap. His first cap had been in 1978. Next, we come to the final friendly of the season. On May 14th, West Germany hosted the Dutch at Dortmund. I guess this one, Rinus Michels was back. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I said he was back in the fall, but Rinus Michels is back as manager.
Yeah.
For this match, we have the following lineup. Hans van Breukelen of PSV Eindhoven, Ronald Koeman of Ajax, Adrie van Tichelen of Groningen, Sonny Siloy of Ajax, Peter Boev of Ajax, Jan Wouters of Utrecht, Danny Blind of Sparta Rotterdam. He's replaced by Wilbert Souvrin of Fortuna Sittard in the 66th minute, Gerald Vandenburg of Ajax, Rob DeWitt of Ajax. He's replaced by Johnny Bosman of Ajax in the 66th minute, captain of the side Ruud Gullit of PSV Eindhoven, and John van Schip of Ajax. Going through the West Germany lineup managed by Franz Beckenbauer, you have Uli Stein of Hamburg in goal, Matthias Herget of Bayer Uerdingen, Thomas Berthold of Eintracht Frankfurt, the late Norbert Eder of Bayern Munich. He'd replaced by Wolfgang Funkel of Bayer Uerdingen in the 46th minute. Captain of the side, Hans-Peter Briegel of Verona in Italy. Lothar Matthäus of Bayern Munich. He'd be replaced by Karl Algober of Stuttgart in the 81st minute. Wolfgang Rolf of Hamburg. Pierre Litbarski of Köln. He'd be replaced by Hans Grundl of Hamburg in the 46th minute.
I was a big fan of Pierre Litbarski. He was special.
Andreas Brehme of Kaiserslautern. Rudi Völler of Werder Bremen. He replaced by Frank.
Most popular German player in the Netherlands. He was the most popular German player in the Netherlands.
Yeah. So he replaced by Frank Mill of Borussia Mönchengladbach in the 75th minute and Klaus Allofs of Köln. For this match, the West Germans would win 3-1. So they took the lead in the 39th minute. Matthäus took a corner kick from the left side and Rudi Völler headed in the opener. West Germany doubled the lead in the 42nd minute. Littbarski took a free kick from the middle that reached Brigel on the left side. He headed it into the box to Völler, who controlled, turned, and shot to score the second goal. The Dutch would have to wait to the 80th minute to pull the goal back, when Uli Stein blocked a shot, but Van Schaep scored the rebound. But the Germans scored a third goal in the 90th minute when Klaus Allofs sent a cross to Herget to advance and score and give the West Germans a 3-1 win. One thing to take away from this match is that this would be Rob DeWitt's final cap for Holland. This was his 8th cap, and all his caps were in 85 and 86. And we somewhat discussed his situation in our last podcast. He was a fixture for Holland, and he seemed to be headed for a brilliant career at Ajax and the national team. But that summer, while he was vacationing in Spain, he suffered a cerebral hemorrhage, and that more or less ended his career. He may have attempted a comeback, but I don't think he was successful. So at a young age, his career was over.
Very sad. Yes. He would have been, I think, a special player like Arjen Robben if he would have been able to have a full career. Or like Robbie Rensenbrink, he had that same sort of snake man skill, and he didn't have any stress or any fear. He would just play. I don't think coaches would have any effect on him. He would just do what he does. It was terrible, a really sad situation. I do remember it well. Also with this game, by the way, I remember the John van Schip goal very well. But he had a similar chance 5-6 minutes later when I think it was Gullit who broke on the right-hand side after the Germans lost the ball. And he played the ball into John van Schip at the penalty spot almost. And Van Schip, who's got a tremendous right foot, hit the ball up to Rosie, like straight up almost. Could have been 2-2 right there. Didn't happen.
A short season. This was the last match of the season, but a defining season. I guess the takeaway is that you're seeing that the new leaders of the team are going to be Gullit, Van Basten, and the young players, basically.
Koeman, yeah.
Koeman, yeah. Before we go, we discussed the club scene as well. What are your main takeaways?
Well, it was an exciting time. We didn't get to the tournaments, and I enjoyed 86 without the Dutch, and I enjoyed 84 and 82. They were amazing tournaments. So it was a positive feel looking back, and knowing that all these youngsters were coming through, knowing that Cruyff was getting involved at Ajax, which was clearly, a buzz around all that. So I think we all felt really positive about the future. And I think it humbled us as well. I think after 74 and 78, having reached the finals twice, we really felt like, we're invincible now. What can happen to us? And then we had all these setbacks. We had the 12-1 with Spain and Malta. And then we had that Wim Kieft red card. We had all these things that went against us. And you could almost say that maybe we weren't professional enough as an overall label. And what I said earlier about Beenhakker, he was the traditional coach. He would select players and he would say, well, you're a lefty, so you play on the left. There was no idea behind it. And I think Michels and the players themselves, because I remember that Cruyff in the background was very vocal to his players about what they should be doing in the Dutch team. And he would always use himself as an example and say to Van Basten, well, if I was your age playing for the Dutch, I would say this and this and this to the coach. So next time you go there, You make sure that you make that happen. So he was very much in their ear. And Rinus Michels obviously hated that. Didn't like that at all. There's a famous incident that happened in 74 with Cruyff and the PSV players, Van der Kuilen and Van Beveren, who weren't welcome. Well, there's a whole story about that. But something like that was bound to be copied by the Van Basten and the Bosmans and the Koeman players from Ajax, as opposed to other players. So there was that atmosphere of finding your way. Who's the key guy here? And, what are we going to do? And I think we needed those bad years to sort this out. And of course, 88, we all know what happened there. That was a new chapter for Dutch football. But even then, 2 years later, we're going with the exact same squad with a couple of extra talents even to the 1990 World Cup, where everything blew up in our face again because of, well, I think bad management again from the top, although the players are always to blame as well. You cannot not blame the players at the end of the day. I think we came a long way since then. Professionalism back then wasn't that great, I guess.
Do you think it needed a player like Jan Wouters in there as well? Because to balance out all the flair players, Vandenberg and Van Chip and players like that, it needed someone to maybe do the ugly things as well and break up the play a little bit. And it seems maybe previously there hadn't been that player in the team in midfield.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. I think every team needs a sort of a captain in midfield, even though if he doesn't have the band, but he can still be like Paul Scholes at Man United or Keane, even a better example, of course. Yeah, and I think Wouters was that player. He wasn't just someone who would give elbows to Paul Gascoigne. He was a good player. He read the game really well, so he was almost like a playmaker. In '88, I think he had a couple of key assists for Van Basten. Van Basten was, of course, the big hero in '88, but without Wouters, and that's why it's so ironic that he made those comments a couple of years before about Jan Wouters. But he was vital. Yeah, I agree with that. But I also think that players like Gullit and Van Basten particularly didn't take the responsibility. When the field is muddy or whatever, you can't use that as an excuse not to perform. And I think the kids, as they were called, I think that Leo Beenhakker called them the French fries generation, because they wanted to go to McDonald's and they want to eat chips and they want to party. And Beenhakker was always like, that's not how you become top in your sports. You're going to live for the sport. And in those days, and this happens, I think, after '88, when Thijs Liebrechts takes the role of the coach, there's also comments being made about Rijkaard and Gullit. And today, if you play for Manchester City and you're Jack Grealish, but you don't run enough, you find yourself on the bench. And yeah, there's no discussion with the coach. And in those days, I guess, it was a bit tougher. But there was a lot of talent there, and particularly Ajax, and to a lesser extent Feyenoord and PSV were playing some exciting football at the time.
Yeah. Also, this is around the time when Gullit and Van Basten are starting to get recognition outside of Holland from major European leagues and press. Remember, Van Basten, I believe, was the top goal scorer in Europe that season.
Yeah.
So he got more recognition like that. Like you said, Gullit was a personality and he was starting to be more noticeable outside of the Dutch borders. That was a season he joined PSV Eindhoven and he took his game to a different level when he joined PSV.
Yeah, he played as a central defender for quite a while at PSV Eindhoven, believe it or not, because PSV Eindhoven would dominate most of the games. So the coach there felt like, well, I don't need Gullit up front. We've got so many good players up front. I'll play him as a central defender. And then with his big, long legs, he would run over the pitch and join in with the attack. And Gullit was stoppable if he was static in the box as a striker. You could put a strong defender against him and he would have a tough time. But at speed, coming with the ball from behind, running into the box, he was unstoppable.
Let's discuss the Dutch season, You must remember this was also the beginning when PSV Eindhoven started spending a lot on players. Remember, they had not won the Dutch league since 1978. Let's go through to the main teams: Ajax, PSV Eindhoven, and Feyenoord. Ajax, as you mentioned, Johan Cruyff returned as manager this season, taking over from Ad de Moos. As far as players joining Ajax, Arnold Muren came in from Manchester United as their main transfer. There was an Australian player, Mike Peterson, from Roda JC, also joined, but he made not much of an impact. And during this season, little-known Scottish player Alistair Dick joined from Tottenham, but he also didn't make much of an impression either. And this would be a season where Stanley Menzo would establish himself in the goal, as Hans Galger was also shipped out and he joined Utrecht in mid-season. So for Ajax, the likes of Dick Schonacker had left, joined Twente and Skede. The Belgian defender Walter Muse, he left Ajax in September and joined Mechelen. And the Austrian midfielder Felix Gasly also left and joined SV Linz in October. Cruyff was starting to build a side. So you had the players like Stanley Menzo in goal. You had Koeman, Spelbos, Boev, Ophoff, Siloy, Aaron Winter. I think he made his debut that season. I believe he was a teenager that season.
19 years old.
Yeah. Rijkaard, Muren, we mentioned. Another young player, Rob Witzke, De Witt, Van Skip, Vandenburg, Bosman, and Van Basten up front. So a very young, good side. Ajax would score 120 goals in the league that season.
Yeah. Johan Cruyff did some interesting things. He because they scored a lot of goals, but they conceded a lot of goals as well. And Cruyff didn't care. He basically started with three defenders, everything full out attack. And every now and then they lost the game as well. I'm not sure they didn't win the title, did they, in that season?
No, PSV Eindhoven won.
Yeah.
That was the first of their titles, yeah.
Yeah, and Cruyff got a lot of criticism in Amsterdam for not going for the title. And he said, it's useless. I want these players first to play football before we win titles. So he experimented like crazy. He would put players on the left back position, like John Van Schip. He would play him as a left back. And everybody went, why would you do that? And he said, that's the only way I can teach him what it is to be a left back. So next time he plays right wing, he understands what his opponent goes through. He had all that sort of thing. And there were times when they didn't have, I may have told you this before, I can't remember, but they didn't have good headers of the ball and the opponent did. And he would just say, well, then just don't give corners away. That was his solution to the problem. So, and there were a lot, I think Rijkaard in particular, he had a lot of trouble with Cruyff. Constant nagging, the constant yelling at practice and, don't do that and don't do this. And Rijkaard walked away. I'm not sure if it's this season or the next, but it was during Cruyff's reign.
Yeah, it was like beginning of 87-88 season when
was it?
They had a fight and he just left Ajax. And
yeah.
I don't know if you remember, he joined Sporting in Portugal and somehow they had registered him late, so he couldn't be there. So he had to join Real Zaragoza on loan until the end of the season.
Correct.
And he joined AC Milan.
And he also signed with PSV Eindhoven.
Yes. That was another story. In the summer of 87, he signed contracts with both Ajax and PSV. And eventually, I think he remained at Ajax, but they had to pay PSV some compensation, if I'm not mistaken. Let's talk about PSV Eindhoven. This was, like I said, the season where they started spending big. That season, this was their first of their fourth consecutive titles. They would score 100 goals. They would only lose one match in the league season. They won 27 of their 34 matches. In addition to Holland from Feyenoord, they signed Danish midfielder Frank Arnesen from Anderlecht. Belgium's defender Eric Gerrits from MVV, England striker Rob McDonald from Groningen. And they had shipped out the likes of Swedish defender Glenn Heisen back to IFK Gothenburg, Danish striker Kenneth Brill to Olympique Marseille, and Pete Wildschut to Antwerp. But if you look at their lineup, managed by Jan Recker, you have Van Broekelen in goal, Ernie Brands, Gerrits, Jan Heinz, the Danish defender, Adi Kut, Hoop Stevens, Barry Van Aerle, Arneson, Hullet, Toon Lakhoff, Michel Valk, René van der Gijp, Yuri Kulhoff, Rob McDonald, Norwegian striker Halvard Thorsen, and Willy van der Kerkhoff. So a very strong side.
Amazing.
Very good side, yeah.
Yeah, amazing.
The third team, the team that finished third, Feyenoord, they had some problems in those years as they couldn't really compete with Ajax and PSV following their 1984 title win. They had signed Danish striker John Eriksson from Mulhouse in France, former Ajax player Shu Laling, who joined from Olympique Marseille, Molnar, who came from Volendam, and another Danish player, Jan Sorensen from Twente. But they had let go, in addition to Hullet to PSV, Andre Staflu had joined Vitesse, Peter Houtman had joined Groningen, and Icelandic striker Petr Pettersson had joined Hercules Alicante, as well as Van der Kooput had joined Köln, and Johan Stuyer had joined Volendam. So you still had the likes of Joop Hille in goal, Stanley Brard, Henk Doet, KJ Molinar, Ken Mankau, who would later join Chelsea, Ivan Nilsson, Danish striker, Siak Troost, Weinsteckers, Mario Bean, Andre Hoekstra, Jan Sorensen, John Eriksson, Shula Ling, Johnny Rep, and Simon Tahamata, side managed by Ab Fafi.
Yeah, I remember that when Cruyff left and a couple of other guys, they wanted to bring some other big name players back to have that same effect, like Johnny Rep, for instance. Arnold Muren went to Ajax, Johnny Rep went to Feyenoord, so didn't really work out though. But I do remember this as an exciting team to watch though, with some interesting players on there.
For next season, we'll continue with the 1986-87 season and the start of the 1988 Euro qualifiers and the new renaissance of Dutch football.
Yeah, please. That would be good.
So once again, we would like to thank Mr. Roskott for his participation in this series. As always, feel free to leave questions and comments. For any questions and comments, you may contact me on my blog and on my Facebook under Soccer Nostalgia. On Twitter, I'm at SP1873. Mr. Paul Whittle can be contacted on his blog, The 1888 Letter. On Twitter, he's at 1888 Letter. You may also follow the podcast on Spotify under Soccer Nostalgia Talk Podcast. And now also on YouTube as well. It's under SP1873. Mr. Roskott's info and his links on Twitter and his website, the Dutch soccer site, are also listed on the blog and Spotify uploads. So, Jan, thank you once again, and we will see you next time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jan.
Enjoy, guys. Talk to you later. Bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.